Before we start, please make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family. Also, can you please tell me where and what time you're watching? Thanks. Ever taken a job thinking it would be one thing, only to have it turn into something entirely different? That's how I found myself working nights at a mortuary in New Orleans. At first, it seemed like a dream gig. Quiet hours, eerie vibes, and a setting that practically screamed for a supernatural investigation. I figured I could turn my shifts into content gold, hidden cameras, creepy footage, and maybe even a viral ghost video or two. Yeah, I know. Dumb idea in hindsight. I'd heard the rumors about the place. Everyone in town had. They said it was haunted, cursed, or maybe both. But I didn't buy into that stuff. Not really. I figured it was just small-town gossip. People love a good ghost story, especially in a place like New Orleans. Still, I couldn't lie to myself. The idea of capturing something real excited me. My channel was struggling, and this seemed like the perfect way to stand out. The job itself was straightforward. Prepare the facilities for the next day, keep things clean, and monitor the security cameras. Nothing too crazy. But a few days before my first shift, I got an email that changed everything. It came from someone calling themselves a friend. No address, no phone number, just a name at the bottom, Joseph Bell. The subject line read, "Your first night." At first I thought it was a prank. The mortuary barely even had a website. There was no way they'd be tech-savvy enough to send onboarding emails. But curiosity got the better of me, so I opened it. The message was short and unsettling. If you value your life, follow these rules. If you ignore this, it's not just your life at risk, it's your soul. I stared at the screen for a long time, unsure whether to laugh or delete it. It had to be a joke, right? Someone local messing with the new guy. But something about the tone stuck with me. It didn't feel like it was trying to scare me. It felt like a genuine warning. And that last line, it sent a chill down my spine. I couldn't bring myself to delete the email. Instead, I printed it out and stuffed it into my bag. I told myself it was just for laughs later, but deep down, I knew I'd be taking it seriously. Something about the name Joseph Bell felt oddly familiar, though I couldn't quite place it. When I arrived, the mortuary was as quiet as I'd expected. The night supervisor gave me a quick tour, pointing out the essentials, where the cleaning supplies were, how to use the cameras, and the location of the embalming room. "You'll be fine," he said, brushing off my questions about the rumors. "This place is old, sure, but don't let your imagination run wild." Before I could ask anything else, he was gone. The first few hours were uneventful. I cleaned floors, checked inventory, and even set up a couple of hidden cameras. If something weird happened, I wanted to catch it on tape. Around 11 p.m., I remembered the email. I pulled out the printout and scanned the rules again, feeling a mix of doubt and unease. Rule 1. If you hear a baby crying, check all the drawers. One will be partially open. Close it immediately. I glanced at the rows of metal drawers lining the walls. They seemed harmless enough, but the idea of opening one gave me the creeps. Rule 2. Always lock the embalming room by 11:30 p.m. If the door unlocks, pray. The embalming room was just down the hall. I made a mental note to check the lock twice. Rule 3. If the power flickers, light a white candle and place it by the nearest body. Luckily, I'd packed a few candles just in case. Rule 4. Don't touch any body tagged with a red toe tag. They're not truly dead. Good to know. Rule 5. At midnight, place a coin under the tongue of the oldest body. Don't skip this step. I didn't even want to think about that one yet. Rule 6. If you hear a song playing faintly, cover your ears and hum until it stops. This one seemed the most absurd, but it also made me the most nervous. By 11:30 p.m., I'd locked the embalming room and triple-checked the door. I told myself I was just being cautious, but my hands were trembling. That's when I heard it. The faint sound of a baby crying. It was distant at first, barely audible over the hum of the air conditioning. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. "No way," I whispered to myself. But the sound didn't stop. My eyes darted to the drawers lining the walls, and I noticed one was slightly ajar. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The crying sounded so real, too real to be a trick of the mind. My first instinct was to ignore it, but the rules from the email echoed in my head. Check the drawers. Taking a deep breath, I walked toward them, trying to ignore the growing unease crawling up my spine. As I approached, the air in the room felt heavier. The crying grew louder, but it didn't seem to come from one specific spot. It was everywhere. I reached the drawers and hesitated, my hand hovering over the partially open one. The sound surrounded me, pressing against my nerves. Finally, I slid the drawer shut, just as the email had instructed. That's when Greg, my co-worker, walked in. He was new like me, having only been here for a few weeks. Greg had an easy confidence and didn't seem fazed by the place or the rumors surrounding it. "What's up?" he asked casually, glancing at the drawer I'd just closed. "It's that baby crying again," I muttered, still shaken by how real it had sounded. Greg chuckled, brushing it off. "Oh, come on, man. It's just an old building. Don't let it mess with your head." He shrugged. "People have been saying this place is haunted forever, but it's just superstition." I wanted to believe him, but something about the sound didn't feel like superstition. Still, I nodded, not wanting to argue. Greg didn't seem worried, so I tried to let it go. I went back to my tasks, but the crying lingered in my mind, like it was following me. As the night wore on, the sound faded, but unease hung in the air. I was sitting at my desk when I suddenly heard Greg's voice, followed by a sharp curse. My stomach dropped, and I ran toward the noise. When I reached the hallway, I froze. Greg was slumped over at a desk, his face pale, blood pooling from his ears. My heart raced as I rushed to him, shaking his shoulders and calling his name, but he didn't respond. That's when I heard it. The same faint crying, only this time it wasn't coming from the air or the walls. It was coming from Greg. The sound rose from his chest, faint but unmistakable, like something inside him was trying to get out. I froze, paralyzed with fear. My mind raced, unsure of what to do. Finally, I ran to call for help. By the time paramedics arrived, it was too late. Greg was rushed to the hospital, but I never heard from him again. After that, the mortuary felt different, too quiet. The kind of quiet that presses against you, making it impossible to relax. I tried to focus on finishing my shift, but every time I glanced at the hallway, I thought I saw something moving in the shadows. The rules suddenly felt much more serious, like they were the only thing keeping me safe. At midnight, I followed the next rule, placing a coin under the tongue of the oldest body in the room. The act felt strange, almost ritualistic, but I didn't question it. The body lay motionless on the slab, its skin pale and waxy. I carefully lifted its jaw and slid the coin under its tongue. The sensation of being so close to something so lifeless made my skin crawl, but I focused on completing the task. Stepping back, I stuffed my hands into my pockets and waited. Nothing happened at first, but I could feel a shift in the air, like the room had grown even stiller. I glanced at the clock on the wall. It ticked over to midnight, and I exhaled a shaky breath. Then it happened. The coin slid out of the body's mouth. At first, I didn't realize what I'd seen. It moved so smoothly, as if it had been body, as if knocked by some invisible force. I bent to pick up the coin, but before I could react, the body jerked upright. Its head turned sharply in my direction, and I froze, instinctively stepping back. The body wasn't alive, of course not, but it didn't seem like it should be sitting up either. I stood there, almost bracing for it to move again. After a few tense seconds of silence, the body slumped back onto the slab with a dull, lifeless thud. I couldn't explain what I felt in that moment. It wasn't pure fear, it was more confusion. I had followed the rules, but I didn't know what I'd expected to happen. Still, I couldn't shake the sense that I was missing something important. Was it the way the body had moved? Or the sudden, eerie stillness in the room afterward? Shaking off the unease, I forced myself to focus. I still had work to do, rules or no rules. Moving methodically, I set about adjusting the hidden cameras I'd placed earlier. If anything else happened, I needed proof. While positioning one of the cameras, I noticed something unusual. In the far corner of the room, a man's body, probably in his 60s, had a red toe tag. The rule came back to me instantly. Don't touch any body tagged with a red toe tag. They're not truly dead. At first I dismissed it, still reeling from what had just happened with the other body. But as I worked, my eyes kept drifting back to it. The body hadn't moved, yet something about it gnawed at me. I double-checked its position, completely still. Or so I thought. Minutes later, when I glanced back, it was gone. My heart skipped a beat. I froze, scanning the room. The slab where it had lain was now empty. My mind raced. Had I moved it? No. There was no way. I retraced my steps, frantically searching for an explanation. I peered into the hallway, my pulse hammering in my ears. At first, nothing. Then I saw it. The body stood a few feet away, head tilted back unnaturally, staring at the ceiling. I froze again, unable to process what I was seeing. It was completely still, its position unsettlingly deliberate, like it had been placed there by someone or something. But I was alone. I hadn't heard anyone else in the building. For what felt like an eternity, I stared. The body remained motionless, its head cocked at an unnatural angle. My instincts screamed at me to retreat, but I forced myself to inch closer, my steps slow and deliberate. Even as I approached, I didn't dare touch it. The rules were clear, no touching. Instead, I observed. Its face was neutral, mouth slightly open, eyes empty and lifeless. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching me. I backed away carefully, the weight of the moment pressing on me. I tried to return to setting up the cameras, but my attention kept drifting toward the figure in the hallway. It didn't move again, standing as though it had always been part of the mortuary's eerie landscape. The rest of the night dragged on with an oppressive heaviness. My earlier experiences had rattled me, but I couldn't shake the sense that worse was yet to come. As I adjusted another camera, the room plunged into sudden darkness. The fluorescent hum vanished, leaving an unnatural silence. My breath caught as the lights flickered, coming back on for just a moment before cutting out again. Panic bubbled in my chest. Another rule. If the power flickers, light a white candle and place it by the nearest body. Hands trembling, I pulled a candle from my bag and lit it, its small flame steady but dim. I placed it near the closest body, the flickering light casting warped shadows across the walls. The room seemed to breathe with the candlelight, the shadows shifting unnaturally. Something about the glow felt wrong, almost malevolent, as though the darkness around it was alive, watching, waiting. Room, making the walls feel as though they were closing in, the space shrinking around me. I tried to refocus on the task at hand, but then I heard it. A faint scraping noise. My gaze snapped back toward the body. The arm, which had been motionless just moments ago, was now extended toward the candle. It was subtle at first, as if it had shifted accidentally. But no, it was deliberate. It was reaching. My breath caught in my throat. The corpse had been perfectly still, lying flat on the slab moments before. Now its outstretched arm inched toward the flickering flame as though trying to snuff it out. I couldn't move, rooted to the spot, watching the impossible unfold before me. The fingers twitched, curling slightly, inching closer to the candle. It was deliberate, almost mechanical, but with an eerie intention that sent chills down my spine. The tiny flame flickered as though it too sensed the encroaching threat. Every instinct screamed at me to act, to move the candle, blow it out, do something. But the rules, I couldn't risk breaking them. I didn't know what would happen if I deviated even slightly. The arm stretched farther, the fingers now just inches from the flame. They twitched again as if fighting the urge to extinguish it. My chest tightened, the room thick with a suffocating tension. I took a cautious step forward, then hesitated. Finally, the arm faltered. Slowly, it retracted, dropping back to the slab with a lifeless thud. The fingers curled inward, resuming their unnatural stillness. For a long moment, I just stood there, frozen, unsure of what to do next. The room felt colder, the air heavier. Time seemed to lose meaning as I glanced at the other bodies. Nothing else moved, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I tried to pull myself together, to focus on the job I'd come here to do. But that arm, it had reached for the candle as if it needed to stop the flame from burning. I needed to clear my head. The night's events were blurring together, and my mind was racing. I decided to step away from the morgue for a few minutes and review the footage from my cameras. Maybe I'd find answers, or at least distract myself long enough to regain some composure. In the break room, I sat down at the monitor, the flickering screen the only source of light. I clicked through the recordings, skimming through hours of uneventful stillness, cold bodies on their slabs, the sterile, lifeless calm of the morgue. Then, something caught my eye. One of the drawers near the back of the room was slightly ajar. I didn't remember leaving it open. I rewound the footage, pausing at the moment the drawer began to slide open. My pulse quickened. There was no one near it. No breeze, no disturbance. It just moved. The drawer opened farther, revealing a body inside. At first the face was obscured, but then the body shifted. My blood ran cold. The corpse was holding one of my cameras. The lens was pointed directly at me. I leaned closer to the screen, unable to look away. The body's stiff fingers gripped the camera unnaturally, almost as if they had been frozen mid-motion. The lens stayed fixed on the monitor. On me. It didn't make sense. I hadn't placed a camera there. I hadn't touched that drawer. Yet there it was, undeniable, staring back at me from the screen. For several agonizing seconds, the body didn't move. It just sat there, holding the camera, the lens unwavering. It felt like it was waiting, watching. My breath hitched as I leaned closer to the monitor, desperate for any clue, any explanation. The footage felt wrong, impossibly wrong. The body's rigid grip, the steady gaze of the lens, it was deliberate. Whatever this was, it wasn't random. It knew I was watching, and I couldn't look away. It felt deliberate, like it was aware of me watching, as if it was trying to send me a message. I replayed the footage repeatedly, hoping it was just a glitch, some odd trick of the camera. But no matter how many times I watched, the drawer opened the same way. The body held the camera in the same position. It was impossible to ignore. After what felt like an eternity, I forced myself to look away from the screen. I had to focus. I couldn't let this stop me. But the image was burned into my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. The body, the camera, it was all pointing to something, but I had no idea what. I was beginning to feel like I was losing my grip on reality. The night had dragged on, and with each passing hour, the feeling of dread grew heavier. I tried to shake off the unease, but it clung to me, making it hard to focus on anything other than the strange occurrences around me. As I walked through the morgue, checking the drawers one by one, my eyes landed on another one slightly ajar. It wasn't the same drawer from earlier, but my instincts screamed for me to look. I took a step closer, my heart racing as I slowly pulled the drawer open. Inside was a sight that made my stomach churn, another body. But this time it wasn't lying there like the others. This body was holding something. My phone. I could see the familiar glow of the screen, the same phone I'd left charging on the desk earlier that night. My hands trembled as I leaned in closer, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The body's fingers were curled around the phone, and I could see the live feed displayed on the screen. It was a video of me, right at that moment, standing in the morgue just a few feet away from the drawer. I froze, staring at the phone in disbelief. The live feed was showing me, but the angle was all wrong. The camera was pointing directly at me from a perspective that shouldn't have been possible. The body in the drawer was holding the phone, watching me as if it were aware of my every move. I couldn't breathe, my mind racing as I tried to process what was happening. How was this possible? How could this body know what I was doing right then? I watched, transfixed, as the feed on the phone began to glitch. The screen flickered, distorting the image of me in the morgue. It wasn't just a glitch, though. It felt as if something was trying to warp the very fabric of reality around me. And then, just as I was about to step back, I saw it. The body's mouth twitched. It wasn't a natural movement. It was deliberate. The corners of its lips curled into what could only be described as a sinister smile. A smile that wasn't just eerie, but mocking, as if the body knew something I didn't, something I wasn't supposed to see. I backed away slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. My mind was racing, but I couldn't make sense of it. The phone, the live feed, the smile, it all felt like a twisted game I didn't understand. I had been following the rules for so long they had become second nature, closing drawers when I heard the baby crying, lighting candles when the power flickered, and placing coins under the oldest body's tongue. Everything felt under control. But by the time that night wore on, something felt different. The air felt heavier, like something was shifting, watching me. It started like it always did. The faint sound of a baby crying echoed through the morgue, its high-pitched wail cutting through the stillness of the night. I knew what I had to do. I rushed to the nearest drawers, my mind racing as I scanned them one by one. I finally found one slightly open. My hand was already reaching for it when my phone buzzed in my pocket, startling me. I pulled it out and checked the screen. It was a notification from the security system. Motion detected in the embalming room. My heart skipped a beat. The embalming room was supposed to be locked and I hadn't seen anyone go in there. I glanced back at the drawer, my fingers itching to close it, but the urgency of the notification took over. I had to investigate. I rushed down the hallway toward the embalming room, and when I reached the door, my breath caught in my throat, my breath halted. The door was wide open and the fluorescent lights inside flickered erratically, casting strange, shifting shadows on the walls. But it wasn't just the lights. Equipment in the room sparked. Electrical wires dangled loose, crackling with dangerous energy. I didn't know what to do. My first instinct was to shut the door and lock it, but when I tried to push it back into place, I realized it wouldn't stay shut. The door kept swinging open, as if something inside was fighting to get out. Panic set in. The baby's crying still echoed in the background, but it was distant now, muffled beneath the rising tension. My hands shook as I tried again to lock the door, but it was futile. It refused to stay closed. I could feel the walls of the building closing in around me, the air growing thick and heavy, as if the very structure was alive with something dark and malevolent. I couldn't think straight. I had to act, but I didn't know how. In the chaos, I had forgotten about the drawer. Suddenly, the crying stopped, and the silence that followed was almost worse than the noise. Then, without warning, the silence shattered with an ear-splitting wail, a sound so loud and painful it felt like the very walls of the morgue were shaking. It reverberated through the building, coming from everywhere at once. I staggered back, my heart hammering in my chest. The wail sliced through me like a knife, my ears ringing from the intensity. It was unlike anything I'd ever heard, raw, primal, and full of agony. I turned back toward the hallway, my mind a blur of fear and confusion. The power flickered and I caught a glimpse of my phone still lying on the floor near the drawer. But I didn't have time to think about that. I needed to get out. I had broken the rule, and now I feared the consequences were already unfolding. After the chaos of that night, I thought I'd seen the worst of it. But just when I thought I could grasp what was happening, another email came through. This time, the subject line was unsettling. "You were warned, Ryan. It was from the same anonymous sender, a friend. My stomach dropped as I opened the message. There was only one attachment, a photograph. I clicked it, and the image loaded slowly. It was a picture of a man standing in front of a morgue, wearing a faded uniform. I recognized the name beneath the photo, Joseph Bell. I froze for a moment. The name didn't register, but then a cold shiver ran down my spine. I stared at the face in the photo, the same face as the body I had seen earlier holding my phone, staring at me through the screen. My pulse quickened, my hands trembling as I clicked through the employee records on my computer. I was desperate to find something, anything that could explain this. Joseph Bell had been a worker here, but according to the records, he'd disappeared days ago. No one knew where he'd gone. The authorities had no leads. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. But the worst part, the chilling realization, hit me like a ton of bricks. Joseph Bell never disappeared. He had been here all along, in the morgue. The body that had held my phone. The reflection in the mirror, it was him. The lights in the mortuary flickered, casting erratic shadows across the room. I turned my head, my eyes locking onto the nearest mirror, and then I saw it. It wasn't my reflection. The face staring back at me wasn't mine. It was Joseph Bell's. My stomach twisted violently as I stared at the image, my mind struggling to comprehend what I was seeing. The face in the mirror was cold, expressionless, almost lifeless. I reached up instinctively to touch my own face, but as I did, the reflection in the mirror mirrored my movements, as if I weren't the one in control anymore. I tried to scream, to shout, to do anything to break free from the nightmare, but no sound came out. I opened my mouth, but it was like my voice had been stolen. The silence around me was deafening, and the realization sank in deeper. This was no longer my body. I wasn't just trapped in this place. I was becoming part of it. Joseph Bell's face stared back at me, cold and unblinking, as the room around me seemed to spin out of control. I stood frozen in front of the mirror, unable to look away from the face that wasn't mine. Panic surged through me, but it was as if my body refused to respond. The silence was suffocating, pressing in on me from all sides, and I felt trapped, not just in this mortuary, but in my own body, no longer my own. Time seemed to stop as I stared at Joseph Bell's face in the reflection. The last shred of my identity was slipping away, and all I could do was watch as I lost myself completely. I tried to move, to scream, but my limbs felt foreign, disconnected. The reflection in the mirror wasn't mine anymore, and I knew deep down I had become part of the morgue's twisted cycle. Eventually, the room faded into darkness, and I don't know how much time passed. I could feel my consciousness dimming, swallowed by whatever dark force had claimed this place. The next night, when the mortuary doors creaked open once again, another worker arrived for their shift, unaware of the horrors that awaited them. They were just like I was when I first walked in, eager, curious, and oblivious to the sinister reality. As they checked their phone, a new email popped up. The subject line was chilling. Read this or regret it. The name on the email was unmistakable. It was mine, Ryan. The cycle had begun again, and now it was too late for me, just as it would be for them. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more creepy stories. Stay safe, and see you in the next nightmare.